What Lorena and Natalie have already talked about. This large question in the mitigation area that Lucy referred to, in all the work we've been doing on this over the years, and I myself am a forester, so I come out of this sort of very male-dominated sector. I believe it's very much to do with the way in which gender and particularly women are framed in the discourse and in the communication messages. And this was made very clear in this report that Lorena and Francois did, wherein they mentioned, again, that in almost all of the IPs, women were, when they were mentioned, seen as a vulnerable group. For me, this is the source of the problem. It's almost framing women as a charity case. And when you do this, you can see how, I mean, here we are at the SIF, we're talking about investments, we're talking about mitigation, this is where the money is, this is where the action is, let's try to reduce carbon emissions, but yet we want to try to introduce some attention to women. And then it's like, what do women have to do with the rest of the picture we just talked about? And that is in part because we are using words like vulnerable, which I call the V word. And I will say right here and now, I would like to start a campaign to ban the V word. And it's not because women are not in positions of vulnerability, but the minute we use the word vulnerable and marginal, in everybody's mind, we've simply confirmed that sort of patriarchal idea that women are somehow in need of being taken care of. And so we can't have that framed picture in that frame and then talk about women as entrepreneurs and agents of change and innovators. There's a disconnect there. And I think what's happening is everybody's defaulting back to their understanding of women in this soft way. And we are just affirming that as long as we continue in the use of the word. So I think first and foremost, we pay attention to our own language and to the kind of messages that we are sending out to the world. I think, and I take inspiration from the indigenous peoples groups, and I keep asking because I think they've done an amazing job at coming from a position of relative weakness to a position of great strength. And I'm always talking to them and saying, how did you do it? So they give some advice. One thing they say is they said, don't talk about your group as stakeholders, talk about rights holders. And they said that's one of the ways of building strength around your positionality. But it's also about, you know, and today we heard in the plenary session about, well, indigenous people are important because we are the owners of the forest. Right? Again, it's this way of establishing we are an important group. You need, as business people, to take heed of what we're saying. We as women have not, I think, made an effective position. We talked about the business case and building the business case, and we go all around the world and we look for evidence of where have women proven themselves. And I think we'll continue to do this, but I think at the end of the day, it's just us. It's bad business practice to not include your very, very large group that includes your clients, your entrepreneurs, your innovators. I mean, what business practice would recommend such behavior? None. And I personally have found a lot more ability to make headway when talking to private sector people than I do in the public sector. In the public sector, we have to build the case, we have to convince, we have to resort to policies. In the business sector, sometimes we get this, well, of course we understand, because we know that risk is a problem, and we understand that if the very people who are most engaged in forest protection, for example, are not benefiting from this, then the risk is too high for us. Bottom line, we're out of the picture. So I think I have learned a lot from just listening to the private sector and to business people that it's kind of a no-nonsense attitude, and I think we need to bring some of that into the way we talk about gender issues and women. I was thinking today, I was reading from the paper about a quote from yesterday's private sector forum. They were speaking about innovation, and they said the trick is measuring and verifying that it is an investment and not a giveaway. And again, I think the minute you start seeing a giveaway, you're a charity case, then you talk about adaptation. And then everybody has a picture of the women in the sari and the flood and the disaster zone, and the poor thing loses her life because she can't climb a tree or something like this. And it's not to minimize how important this is, because this is life or death. But we keep seeing that picture every time we talk about gender and climate change. People keep resorting back to this idea of women being caught in natural disasters and being in positions of weakness. And that is a part of it, but it's not really the part that we're trying to move ahead with here. We want to look at women as innovators and as entrepreneurs. No question that women are doing all kinds of innovation, but guess what? We're not capturing it because we've got our eye on another ball. So I think that the way to do this is, and I think, and here's another point I would like to bring up. I haven't heard a lot of talk about women's leadership. When I think about Lorena and Francois' study and some of the successful cases you found, the first question that comes to my mind is, who was behind that happening, right? That didn't just happen. And I know your study, you couldn't do a deep dive into that, but I can bet that in many of those cases where there is a successful story to report, it's because there was a woman or a man who was taking the leadership, promoting it, championing this cause. And we find this again and again and again. So I think there's got to be some recognition of the power and the force of individuals who are committed to this, who see ways forward and look for ways to manipulate and manage the situation to come out with these positive responses. Women's leadership is an extremely important thing. It's another form of capacity building. We believe that men supporting women leaders is a very powerful way to go. It's something that we work on a lot, and we find tons of men who are extremely interested to play a very important role in women's empowerment and gender equality. They're sitting there quietly in the room. It's not easy always for a man to come out as a gender champion, but with a little support, we found fantastic support for that. I also believe that, and this is the model we use at Wocan, the linking of women at all levels. So linking women at the community level with women business owners, with women professionals working in agriculture, forestry, red, energy, etc., and creating powerful synergies around those kind of partnerships is a very smart way to build support for what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, we have to have support for pilot projects. We need space and financial resources and technical expertise. We need to go out there and try things. And this morning it said we need to make mistakes. Absolutely. Someone has got to give the space for innovations to start. And in that way, I wanted to just here also tell you about a new project we're involved with, which is an ADB project that's just beginning called Harnessing Climate Mitigation Initiatives to Benefit Women. And this is a project that will start now in Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And we are working to develop the entrepreneurial capacities of women's groups in those countries to engage in renewable energy generation as a business. And we're also at the same time working with the government and the other partners to sort of get them to build their capacities for recognition of gender. I think the way we're going to break down this understanding of women as vulnerable groups is simply create a lot of projects that are going to show the reality to be something different, as you've done in Mexico, and to make videos and to promote that message and change the frame of the way it's understood as women in climate change. So that's really what I'd like to say, but I would also just like to support very strongly what Natalie also said, that within the SIF there needs to be a focal place and a focal person. I don't want to say a gender focal point, but somebody who can take the coordination role, who can be the person that everybody goes to when countries need assistance, who knows where to turn, where to help people turn for that kind of assistance. It's not a huge group of experts out there who have the kind of skills in gender and climate change. Many of us are trying to increase the numbers of people with this expertise. That's the need of the day. But it's also about creating the demand. If the demand starts to increase, it will be easier to sort of recruit more and more people into this sector and into this field. So I hope that we're able to do this. Thank you very much.